Thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Late the W podcast. As always, I'm your host, Mahal. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe, leave a 5-star review, all of that fantastic jazz. If it's your first time joining, make sure you follow on social media at Late the W pod on all of that. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, we're active on all of those. So without further ado, let's sound the horn and get into this episode.
The pitch from Acevedo.
Swung on and line down the left field line for a base hit. Fly ball, gap, right center field. And
Double him up at second.
Luke is going back to the 1-8 track. Get out the right, run and Buster Grandma. It is grand salami time.
And will send Seattle to the American League Championship Series for the first time in 24 years.
World Baseball Classic Championship Day is here. We're just over a week away from opening day for your Seattle Mariners as they open up at home against the Cleveland Guardians next Thursday. Today is Tuesday, March 17th, and welcome to episode 130 of the Light the W podcast. As always, I am your host, Mahal, and we are riding solo today talking about the WBC and Mariners injury news and what that could do for the opening day roster. So, without further ado, sound the horn and let's get into episode 130. Let's start with the World Baseball Classic and what has been a fantastic tournament for the game of baseball. All teams playing great. Every game, it feels like, has been fantastic. Italy making a Cinderella run until finally eliminated in the semifinals against Venezuela. The United States will face Venezuela in the finals. Tonight, we've seen the United States run through the Dominican Republic and Canada in the knockout rounds. And that DR United States game, what a game. What a fantastic game. Baseball at its very best. Playoff baseball in March. And people still say the WBC isn't freaking awesome. It is freaking awesome. It is the World Cup equivalent for baseball. Is it at that stage yet? No. But this is only the 6th WBC ever. So let's set our, expectations at a reasonable level. Let's start with the good from that game. And before we get into some Mariner-specific stuff around the WBC, and obviously Mariner-specific stuff, because at the end of the day, this is a Mariners podcast, that game was freaking awesome. The moments, the home runs, Junior Caminero giving the lead with that crowd from the DR and these Latin countries that are just the fan bases, what it means to these players. It's something different. It's something that, Americans, I don't know if they can fully comprehend and understand it, because it's completely different for these players that come from these Latin countries where, you don't grow up in the greatest circumstances, where you have to just work your way through, and where you grow up playing baseball in the streets. That's not a thing in the United States really anymore. Maybe you'll go to the park and you'll play ball with, some friends when you're young. Maybe you'll go play some wiffle ball. But it's not the same. You're playing very organized baseball from a very young age in the United States. You're not just going out there playing the game because it's a game. And that's how you really build a love for this game and what it does in playing the game. And that's how you get better, is just playing and enjoying it because of the core of what it is. It's a game. And these Latin American countries, they bring that out in the most beautiful way. Junior Caminero has showed it off. The DR team showed it off. Venezuela has showed it off. And it's been freaking awesome to watch. All of these players, all of these teams, all these countries play. And I am looking forward to tonight's ball game between Venezuela and the United States a lot. political impact aside, all that aside, these are two of the best teams. I would say two of the top 4 teams in the world, two of the top 4 countries in the world at baseball. And they are matching up in the final. Ronald Acuna Jr., Bobby Witt, Wilyer Abreu, not on the same level as Aaron Judge, but Aaron Judge, Eduardo Rodriguez, Nolan McLean, Luis Arias, Bryce Terang, Gunnar Henderson, Mason Miller, Cal Raleigh, the Big Dumper, Bryce Harper. I mean, the names are endless, especially for this United States team. But that Venezuela roster is pretty freaking good. And they are playing some great baseball right now. And they are finding ways to come through in the clutch and find their moments. And they're going to have an opportunity, very likely, to do so again tonight, 5 p.m. Pacific time on Fox. It's going to be a fantastic atmosphere, fantastic game. Cal Raleigh, Gabe Spire facing off against Edward Bizardo, couple bullpen arms for the Mariners, and it's just going to be a great ball game. It really is, and this tournament has showed baseball at its best outside of some umpire stuff where you can see why ABS is coming into this, and maybe ABS is a discussion point for the very beginning of the season. We'll talk about sort of some of the impacts of that and what to expect with it. But we're going to get a fun season of baseball, and it's teed off with the WBC. And this has just been a great year of sports already thus far, and it's just going to continue that way. WBC, MLB, news of the Sonics, it seems like, are going to come back after all of those years. The Seahawks won the Super Bowl. They're going to be good again next year. Kraken might make the playoffs. The World Cup is in Seattle and is this year. 2026 is a great sports year. It'll be one we remember for the rest of our lives. And tonight is championship game for the WBC, and there are some Seattle faces, some Seattle players that are going to be at the forefront of storylines of this game. You'd imagine Cal Raleigh will likely start. They've kind of been alternating games. We'll see. And if he gets a big moment to have a big homer and a big at bat, this is a guy that comes through in the clutch. And his swing hasn't been at its best. He hasn't been at his best. We can all admit that. But if he gets an opportunity to have a moment, he is a guy that can take advantage and have that moment. The Mariners themselves are in Peoria. Spring training has continued, and they haven't won very many games in the Cactus League. But it's spring training, and you haven't had a lot of your guys, and it's spring training, so who freaking cares at the end of the day? The things we do care about are that Brendan Donovan is that freaking guy, that Cole Young has looked very good, and that Josh Naylor is back there after playing in the WBC. Unfortunately, that 4th spot in your infield has been the topic of some negative storylines, as J.P. Crawford has dealt with shoulder injuries, sort of on and off, and it hasn't been a big injury. He's off to see a specialist today just to make sure that everything's clean, that they're doing the right thing. But, as I mentioned in the Open, we're just over a week away from opening day, and J.P. Crawford has not played very much spring training. He hasn't played in very many games. He's been doing work on the backfields, but he hasn't been able to build up that arm strength because he hasn't been able to necessarily throw and build himself up in the extent that you want to. And for a guy that plays a ton of baseball games, that is your starting shortstop, and that has started to deal with some arm issues and throwing issues already over the past couple of years, a shoulder injury in spring training is not good. It's not. And before I get into whether or not he is going to miss opening day or whether or not how that's going to impact, the roster and whether we might see a rookie make the opening day roster, a big name rookie, big name prospect. A shoulder injury that is already lingering through spring training and has been sort of on and off, that can hang into the season. And J.P. Crawford isn't the greatest defender. We all know that, but most of that's due to his range. He's able to pick balls. He has a good glove itself. But you will miss periods of time if you're dealing with shoulder stuff, because if you're not building up that arm strength overall and you're dealing with shoulder stuff in your throwing arm, you're not going to be able to, make it through a full season. You might deal with other stuff. And I should have checked before this episode which shoulder it actually is for J.P. Crawford, because I can't quite remember which one's actually injured. But whether it's the throwing arm or whether it's not, it is still going to impact how ready he is for the season. And nobody's specifically super concerned about it. Crawford's only played in 7 Cactus League games so far this spring. He's only started at shortstop 3 times. There are issues. There are concerns. There are worries. And J.P. Crawford's bat already is up and down. And he's almost been like a guy that is, even year JP is a little bit of a scary feat. 2023, really good season. 24, 25, good season. He hasn't put in back-to-back seasons where he's truly, truly, truly been at his very best. And if he's not at his best, this team looks very, very different. So, how does J.P. Crawford being hurt actually impact this Mariners roster if he were to miss opening day? Now, we don't know if he will, but like I said, it is a short period, short turnaround for him to try and make the opening day roster. And that's going to be difficult for him to pull up and turn around when he hasn't played all that many games at shortstop, and the Mariners want him healthy for 162, so they're going to slow play him a little bit. They're going to try and be careful with him, because ultimately you kind of have to be. You don't want this guy to be injured all through the season, and it is J.P. Crawford's throwing arm. And it's just a lingering injury, and if it's lingering now, it'll linger into the season very likely if you don't give it time to heal itself and make sure that you get right. And if it's not right, there are the potential of other issues coming up, because then you start to compensate throwing-wise with other parts of your arm and other parts of your motion when you're throwing the ball. That's his front shoulder hitting. You're pulling that. You're pulling that every swing as a left-handed hitter. So the Mariners are going to make sure that he is right and ready for when he ultimately does make his debut this season. Now, who potentially will be your starting opening day shortstop should he not be on the opening day roster? Well, Leo Rivas feels like the most likely guy. Leo Rivas, we know what he is. He is your backup shortstop. He's your backup infielder. He's a utility guy. He would open up the ability for guys like potentially Ryan Bliss to make the roster, a guy that we haven't seen a lot. And he's most likely who will fill in there. But what people are going to want to happen, what they're going to be talking about, is a top 10 prospect in baseball in Colt Emerson making the opening day roster. Now, Colt Emerson doesn't have a ton of experience at AA, hasn't been in the minors all that long. He's a very young kid. He's had a solid spring, nothing too crazy, nothing where he's like forcing his way onto the roster, which is what it very likely would have taken to make the opening day roster. But an injury also can do that. And there is the potential that should JP miss a little bit of time, the Mariners do end up rolling with Colt Emerson. That said, this is going to be a team that is very cautious, a front office that is very cautious in not rushing Colt Emerson. We've seen them rush prospects in the past. Whether it was this front office or not, the Mariners have a history of rushing prospects. Did they rush Jared Kelenic? Maybe. And we don't want that to happen with Colt Emerson. Now, those two players have very different makeups, very different personalities, all of that. So there's no guarantee that even rushing him would screw up Emerson's development. And it depends how much are you truly rushing him. But I and most people do believe Colt Emerson needs more time in the minor leagues to be able to fully be ready for big league pitching and to be able to actually make an impact. Because this is a team that expects to be, a top team in the American League and expects to win this division and want to make the World Series. That is their goal, to not only make, but win the World Series. And that starts next Thursday on opening day. You need to be at your very best. You need to be able to win as many freaking games as possible. That starts in April. Those games in April, they matter just as much as the games in, May, June, July, August, or September. Even the very beginning of October, sometimes, if you play into October with the regular season. Those games matter all the same. You need to be able to win those games. So you need your roster to be at the very best. And is Colt Emerson being rushed slightly as a prospect better for this team in April, in June, in August than him waiting to make his debut, making sure he's ready, making sure he has enough time to be at his best for when he makes his debut? Does it make sense to do that? Does it make sense to rush him? I personally don't think so. I think Leo Rivas should be the opening day shortstop should JP Crawford miss time, and Leo Rivas was pretty good last year when he played. He's going to get more opportunities this year. We love Cousin Rivas. He's a damn good player when he gets his opportunities. Now, he hasn't been exposed necessarily to the extent that some guys have, so it'll be interesting to see what he does, but give him that opportunity. Why take away the opportunity before he shows whether he's going to be able to do it or not? So should you worry about 162 games for JP Crawford? Should you worry about him in September? Well, I think you should worry about how long this is going to linger, because the Mariners don't know, JP Crawford doesn't know, we don't know. We don't know how this is going to heal. We don't know what the actual injury is until we get more news, more reports. MRIs have been clean, all of that. He seems like he's okay. He just needs time to heal. And how long is that going to take? We don't know. So maybe be worried about JP Crawford down the stretch. But in the meantime, trust what the organization is telling you and that they're not concerned. They think he's going to be okay. But also understand he's probably not going to be ready for opening day as this stands. And that's okay. That's why you build up depth. That's why you get extra pieces. That's why you have multiple guys that can play multiple positions. That's why you have versatility. Why you have a deeper roster and a farm system that can bring guys up. That's what it's there for. To fill in for cases of injury. And if he misses maybe a little bit more extended period of time, well, then you can go potentially make a move. Whether it's small, whether it's large, probably small if we're being honest. But there are options for different things that you can do to supplement should JP Crawford miss time. Other issue, injury-wise. Bryce Miller has dealt with an oblique injury. His left oblique has been a little bit tight. I don't know exactly what the injury is. It's just sort of a lingering thing, sort of similar to JP Crawford. He threw a full intensity bullpen earlier this morning. He threw it all the way through. Is he going to be on track to make, his first start? It kind of feels like not, especially because he's only made a pair, I believe, of spring starts. And you have to ramp up. You have to be ready. So he's going to need, some more time probably just to be able to get up to the point where he can throw 5, 6, 7 innings. And you want to make sure that this guy is healthy for the entire season. You want to be very careful with this guy, because if he can do what he did in 2024, in 2026, then this is a very different team. A very different team. He's a key guy that can flip the range of outcomes of this Mariners team and what they do in 2026 drastically. You need him to be right. You need him to be at his best. You need him to be healthy. And it starts in the spring in terms of healthy. So make sure he's healthy. Make sure he's ready. Make sure he's good to go before you throw him into the fire of games during the regular season. Does that mean you're going to have to see an Emerson Hancock start or two? Probably. But that's okay. That's fine. He will start games at some point this season. You'd rather him make 1-2 starts early in the season than have to make a ton down the stretch. You need to make sure that your players that are hurt right now, whether it's large, whether it's small, whatever it may be, you need to make sure that they are going to be able to play down the stretch and be at their best down the stretch. And I was talking about how it's important to win these April games, and it's technically just as important as these September games. Well, if you make it into October, those are the games that are really freaking damn important. And you need your guys to be healthy and at their best at that point. In October, when you hopefully win the division, when you hopefully make the postseason, when you're hopefully competing for an AL pennant, that's when you need Bryce, Miller, JP Crawford, the rest of this team to be at its very best and ready to go and playing their best and healthy and able to contribute. So you have to make sure they're not going to have an injury now that ails and lingers through the entire season. That's why ultimately it does feel like J.P. Crawford and Bryce Miller will miss the opening day roster. They'll start on the IL, and that's okay. They can start there. And you make sure that they're good. You make sure they're ramped up. You make sure that they're not going to deal with another injury because they didn't have a full spring training before they pitch in the regular season. And should they miss the opening day roster, then we'll talk about who will truly fill in for them. We'll look at the roster. We'll say, okay, let's break down Emerson Hancock. Okay, let's break down Leo Rivas. What does Leo Rivas do well? What does he not do well? What might teams expose with him? What did Emerson Hancock work on this offseason? What did he tweak? What did he do well last season to make sure that he can participate and be a solid 5-starter for this Mariners team? That's when we'll get into those conversations. Because before then, it's just speculation. And as we inch towards opening day, we will be doing more preview episodes this Thursday. Jeff and I will be talking about the American League West. Our predictions for it. Who are the top players? Who are we fearing most? What do these teams look like? What did they do during the offseason? We'll briefly get into predictions for the National League, and we'll gear you up for this divisional race for the Seattle Mariners as they look to win back-to-back American League West titles for the first time in franchise history. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Light the W podcast. Till Thursday, peace out, go M's, and ciao.